Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Byington, and in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about the background of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, specifically its respective manuscript. So we know this by an official title, the Cotton Arrow, and that gets its name from the name of the gentleman whose library this book first came from. And then the numbers you have there, down all the way down to the AX, that names the bust, case, and shelf. Like this was his whole cataloging system. So kind of like in a public library today where you would have a call number. That's essentially what you're seeing in that strange name in italics for this manuscript. And Sir Cotton was so that's a gentleman from the 16th century. We assume that the actual manuscript itself was likely written in the late 1300s, so the late 14th century. It contains four works total. Now, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is probably one of the most commonly taught of those four. The one of the other three remaining works in that manuscript, known as Pearl, that would probably be like a good second choice. And then Cleanness and Patience are also two other works in that manuscript. Now, because of the four collective works, this is how we get the quote unquote author name that we assign to this manuscript because we don't know who wrote it. It's anonymous. And please keep that in mind when you are reading or writing about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. If you say written by and you put the name of the person who has written the translation, then I or your other professor, whoever you're writing it for, they might assume you haven't really studied this to the effect of which you should have studied it. Usually you're reading a translation that's taking that from Middle English to modern day English. So what you are reading is not the original language, as you can see when you look at this the right half here of the first page from the manuscript itself. It's not modern English. We assume that this was written by possibly a monk, a priest, could be a nun. Like it would be someone who was literate, had the ability to read and write, and not just an average scribe, perhaps, because it's assumed to have come from a monastery, but maybe it was somewhere before that too. This is all speculation on the origins. But since we don't know who it is, and we say that it's written by anonymous when we're talking about it in its original language, not translated into modern English, we often call that anonymous author the Pearl poet, or sometimes the Gawain poet. That's also a very commonly used reference to whoever this author was. Now, something else you likely notice here is that this is handwritten. This is not a type of typeset from a printing press. We're not going to have Caxton's printing press until later in the 15th century. And so also recognize how this makes the accessibility to literature and to being literate, for that matter, very exclusive, really reserved for the elite, because books would have been very expensive because there couldn't be a lot of them because they're being produced by professional scribes or those living in monasteries, like I just mentioned. So if it's being handwritten, imagine having to handwrite word for word a large book that you had to read in, say, high school or in another class, in college. How painstakingly mind-numbing that might be, and to do it well, and to echo exactly what the original source says, because that's what you are being hired to do. So you probably don't want to be paid peanuts for your work if you were a scribe. So books were really expensive. Um, Something else about this manuscript, specifically regarding Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, is that we also have this illustration here of that scene from part one that you'll hear me talk about in that respective video covering part one. But illustrations like that are also a pretty big deal from uh, manuscripts from the Middle Ages. You probably even seen memes about them because they're so ridiculous. You know, it's things like a cat playing violin while it is riding a snail on it with a saddle, like as if it's riding horseback. You know, it's always just these really absurd, crazy things. Here, you just have a literal depiction of a scene from part one of the manuscript. Okay, so that is all of the information I want to cover for you briefly regarding just the background and manuscript of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Thank you for watching.